I, 17M, have a strained relationship with my mum, 35F, after an incident that happened about 6 years ago. My mum was super strict and a helicopter parent, so we fought a lot over my grades and the trouble I got into at school. She had essentially abandoned me, signing over custody to my dad after I had told her something along the lines of "I hate you and I wish I lived with dad," typical things an angsty preteen says to their parent. But that fight seemed to have broke her and she cried before dropping me off at my dad's apartment. I thought it wouldn't be a big deal and I would just see her the next day after she proved her point, but she left me there. After that, things got essentially worse for me. My grades dropped and I kept getting into trouble at school, almost to the point where I was kicked out. My dad never had job security, so money was tight. His GF also wasn't fond of me, saying I was dumped on them. I wanted to go back to live with my mum. I thought to apologize, but my mum had essentially moved on with her life. She went back to college to get her degree and was always studying, and later on was focused on her new work. On the weekends I would get to see her. Things were tense between us. She tried so hard to be the fun parent, eating takeout and leaving me to do what I wanted, but it was so unlike her, and we became more estranged. 3 years ago, she started dating Paul, 39M, a widower with 2 daughters, 9F and 13F. She started treating his daughters like they were her own and they started calling her mummy, which irritated me. Eventually they moved into my mum's house and changed my childhood bedroom into one of the daughters' room. I was livid when I found out, saying some mean things about the girls, and refused to go back there for my mum's weekends, but she was confused on why I was acting this way. Because of this fight, she thought I wouldn't be attending the engagement party when she announced her and Paul would be getting married. Besides, she didn't want there to ruin the perfect picture of her new family. So I made it a point to go for the party, and called her out on her behavior. I wanted to confront her and tell her she wouldn't have to bother with me after I go off to college, but I may have taken it a tad too far. Everyone kept talking about how Paul's daughters were like her children and how it would be when she had more kids, and it snapped something in me. I called her a horrible parent and told her she was trying to replace me with the little brats after she had abandoned me, along with some other insults I don't really remember. Paul kicked me and my dad out, saying I was in a hole for making his fiancée and girls cry, and ruining the engagement party. He said I won't be allowed to the wedding unless I called and apologized. I may have taken it a bit too far, but my dad agrees he had it coming after abandoned a young child at an age when I needed my mother. So should I apologize? Comment 1. Hi, child of divorced parents here. From the bottom of my heart, YTA. Trying to help your child and being strict with them after they get bad grades and get in trouble at school is normal. You didn't like the consequences of your actions, so you lashed out. And you got exactly what you wanted. She was too strict and helicoptering? You hated it. She was the chill weekend parent? You hated it. Didn't want to live with her? Got what you wanted. Deal with your actions and stop blaming her for them, and please either apologize and change your tune or leave that woman and her family alone. Comment 2. This isn't going to fix itself. You'll need to sit down and probably have a serious conversation about how you two want to move forward. Showing up uninvited just to ruin the engagement party was especially cruel of you, however. That's not the time and place to confront her or make amends. You only did that to be mean and petty. It sounds like you want to apologize and make amends, but nowhere in this post have you mentioned making any efforts. Based on your version of the story, I would be inclined to believe that Mom did make some mistakes, but in terms of repairing the relationship, it seems like you are mostly to blame for the continuing strife. Comment 3. ESH. Your mom wasn't emotional mature enough to be a good parent because she was a child when she had you. You're a monster with what you described, and quite honestly wouldn't want to be around you either if everything I did for you wound up being an attack against me. There is such a thing as going too far even as a young teen/preteen. You were technically old enough to know better but chose to act out and hate your mom. Your regret states as much. You're still acting like a monster to her, and you're damn well old enough to know better. My ex-husband and I divorced when my son was 10. My ex had found someone new. We went for 50-50 custody, but he still had to pay some child support. I went back to school at that time. On the weeks his dad had him, I buckled down and did nothing but schoolwork. When he was with me, I made sure I had time for him before and after school. I did expect him to help around the house, but nothing excessive. Mostly just cleaning up after himself and helping with cooking and laundry. His dad's house was more fun. I tried to make my home welcoming. I bought a used PS4 and I got fiber optic internet. It wasn't enough for him. When he was 14, he and his father got the court to award my ex primary custody. I did fight it, but my son made it clear he would run away if I didn't give in. Counseling didn't help. I tried everything. It was devastating having my son decide I wasn't someone he wanted to spend time with. He started skipping visitation. When he did come, he would leave the house and not come home until it was time to sleep. During this time I started a relationship with my current husband. He helped me through this. He wasn't on my radar romantically, nobody was, so he got close by being an amazing friend. I asked him out and we got married 6 months later. We had known each other since I went back to university. 6 months after we got married, I got pregnant. By strange coincidence, so did the woman my ex was cheating with. Not the woman he left me for. A newer model. I had sold my house and my husband and I bought a condo together. Just a 2-bedroom apartment with a tiny den. We made the den into a nursery and consolidated our offices into the 2nd bedroom. My ex moved in with his new girlfriend and she isn't a fan of my son. His stepmother doesn't want him there if his father isn't there, so my son is also in the new house with his dad's pregnant girlfriend and her mom. My son is 16 now and he called me to see if he could stay with me. I said I didn't really have any room. He asked me what I did with his room. He didn't even know I sold the house. He is very upset. He called me a bitch for not having a place for him to stay. I said he could stay in our living room on the couch. Not acceptable. I talked to my husband and we have enough money from the sale of my house and his old bachelor pad as well as our condo to buy back into the market. We were waiting for interest rates to fall. And we were going to move to a more reasonably priced city. I told my son if he could take the living room for now, we could have a room for him in 6 months. He moved in with his grandparents. He isn't happy there. At least his dad got him a car so he can drive to his same school. My son is pissed that I prioritized my new baby and my work over him. I had no expectation to ever need to house him again. My ex called me and told me to make our office into a room for our son. I told him that our son's circumstances were his fault, not mine. Comment 1. I do not for the life of me understand why OP is being ripped apart here. She did everything she could, including counseling, to keep him in her life, and he allowed himself to be more or less bought by his father. Needless to say, Dad is the biggest R in this whole scenario because it is his responsibility to make sure his son has a home exactly like the son chose it, but was Mom supposed to just keep a room for someone who stopped talking to her for no good reason other than being less fun? NTA. Comment 2. I'm seeing people say that the son is trying to reach out to her plus reconnect, but he just needs a place to stay. She did everything she could to make staying with her easier on him and he chose his dad every time. It's not fair on him, but blaming her for her ex's libido overriding any love for her son is crazy. Comment 3. NTA. Kid made it clear he didn't want to live with OP ever and didn't even want visitation. He has somewhere to live that's safe. 16 is old enough to learn actions have consequences. Also curious as to why no one is pissed Dad doesn't have room for him. He needs to get a bigger place with the new chick. 58M, was recently diagnosed with a terminal condition. Won't get into details, but it was the classical went in with a paper cut, got out with AIDS cancer 2000 situation. I've got roughly a year and a half left. Over time, I've made a bunch of unwise decisions. I have multiple children with different women. I have 3 sons, Lance, 43M, who has 2 daughters, Mark, 22M, and Tony, 15M. And 4 daughters, Cami, 38F, who has 4 children, Linda, 30F, Ronnie, 28F, and Kathy, 24F. Not going to lie here, I'll just say that I was only involved in raising Ronnie and Kathy. Their mom died when they were little and I couldn't refuse to take them in. Ronnie is starting her career in law and Kathy recently got her degree in agriculture. 9 years ago I also took in Mark, who was kicked out by his shitty stepdad. Mark decided against pursuing higher education. I own a ranch. It's not a little one, though, but we're managing just fine with the help of hired staff. We have about 500 heads of cattle, not counting the horses. The ranch has been in my family for generations. I know for certain that the only children who would be interested in preserving the ranch are Kathy and Mark. Maybe it's just my delusion grandeur, but I'm very passionate about passing the ranch down to my children, so they'll be able to continue the family tradition. Knowing my children and knowing that they probably inherited my amazing personality, I can say for sure that the second I draw my last breath, there will be an inheritance war vicious enough to make Middle East and Eastern Europe seem like a recess fight in kindergarten. It will be nasty, painful and disgusting. I wrote a will. As per my will, the ranch will go to Kathy and Mark 50-50, including all the machines, trucks, other equipment, financial assets. Ronnie, the executor of the will, is getting my 1970s Lincoln Continental. She's the one who's driving this car for the last 5 years and she's the one paying for maintenance, insurance, everything. The other children get $10,000 each and Tony gets my car, a 2010's Chevy Suburban, purely because it's a safe car and he's getting his license this year. The grandkids also get $5,000 each. It's not much, but I don't own much either. I've notified my children that I don't have much time left. Of course they asked to see the will. I know that the second they see it, the shit will hit the fan and things will escalate. I don't want it. I don't want to spend my final year seeing my children suffer and fight. Ronnie advised me against disclosing the will. She's a skilled lawyer, so I trust her completely. I refused to disclose the will and now my children are enraged. They keep speculating about the will, they keep pestering me and giving advice on what should I leave to whom. Am I the a-hole for refusing to disclose the contents of my will? By now, the only ones who know about them are me and Ronnie and I intend to keep it this way. Comment 1. One piece of advice. I transfer ownership of the ranch prior to your death. You don't need to disclose that with anyone. That will prevent any legal disputes if they want to challenge the will. Also, I'm not a lawyer, but isn't the fact that you lawyer is also a person of interest in the will a liability if it comes down to court? Comment 2. NTA. It's your will, and you have the right to keep it private. Your concerns about family strife are valid, and it's understandable to want to avoid it during your final days. Trust in your lawyer's advice and focus on spending quality time with your loved ones. Comment 3. I mean, I'm going to go soft YTA. Mostly, because they are going to see that will and, as you put it, at that time the shit will hit the fan. You are simply chickening out of being a part of that fight by putting it off until after you're dead. Families ought to talk about money more than they do. Inheritance particularly. It's important that your family understands your wishes. The only person who can help them to understand what you want is you. We went to see Dune 2 last night. In a VIP theater with comfy seats and table service. Which I mention because to attend, you must be 19 plus, they serve real drinks. Seated 2 rows ahead of us were 3 young women. 19 to 22 I'd guess. They didn't shut up during any of the previews, and spoke loudly to each other throughout the movie. Which is annoying, but, unfortunately, hardly unique these days. But what was incredibly annoying? Starting at about 20 minutes into the movie, one of them got onto her phone. She was only 2 rows ahead and it was full brightness, so it'd be an understatement to say it was distracting. She'd text, scroll Instagram, watch TikTok videos. For a few minutes. Then put it down. 10 minutes later, out came the phone again. After the third time, I said, quite loudly, "Put the phone away." She looked back, gave me a look like "STFU old man," but put it down. And then, 10 minutes later, pulled it out again. Again, full brightness. So I got a piece of popcorn and threw it at her. Hit her on the head. As you can imagine, she turned around. "Are you ducking serious right now?" "Yeah, I'm serious. Can't you live without your phone for a couple of hours?" "Shh," said someone. "Shut up," said someone else. She put it away. And then, maybe 20 minutes later, out it came again. I threw another piece of popcorn, which barely missed but flew by her face. She put the phone away and it stayed away for the rest of the movie. Nobody stood, nobody clapped, nobody really cared. And that might have been the end of it, except after the movie, she quite bluntly said to her friend as we were walking out, looking at me, "That's the a-hole." In telling others about this morning, I've come to understand that movie etiquette has changed from when I was 20. Back then, of course, there weren't phones. But it was unheard of to engage in behavior that'd be distracting to others. And when phones appeared 30 years ago, you'd never get on it during the movie, and if you had to, you'd walk out and deal with it. But these days, this is par for the course. Anyway, if I'm paying $25 per ticket plus food plus drinks, expensive, plus parking for a night out and a true theater experience, I'd like to enjoy it with what I think is the environment all of that deserves. I can watch movies at home and get on my phone all I want, for free. This is supposed to be different.